have what you need and someone to put them up for you. And then he directed her to me. And she came up to me, introduced herself, looked at me up and down, and I said, I can do that for you. And we met up a few days later at her wonderful apartment, and I took some measurements, and we kind of hit it off. And then I came by, put up shelves for a few days later, and I feel like we became lifelong friends. She was so down to earth and so wonderful. And I found out afterwards, she told me, wow, I really thought your boss was going to put up all that stuff for me. And when I saw this little girl who was going to do all this, I thought, holy cow, that's really going to happen? So I love that about her. Dede L'chaim.
Being Lisa's partner, I got to meet Dede at the beginning when she moved in and was reconstructing her West Coast apartment. Our mantra as friends here in San Francisco have always said that when I grow up, I want to be Dede Draper. And so many people have asked me over the years is, well, what is so special? Why do you want to be Dede Draper? It's because Dede encompassed everything that her obituary said. From the common folks to meeting world leaders and listening to all of her stories. That is what made her special, but what made her more special is that she was always interested in you, whoever you were. Dede, Lisa, myself, as many of our friends have taken a lot of road trips, breweries, restaurants. We get out, and when we have dinner parties, when Bill and Melanie would call in the evening, I would tell Dede, tell them the strippers are coming, you know? Let's get off the phone. There's a specific trip. Dede would rather scoot up to a bar and have appetizers and cocktails. And we heard this story about a place called Apple Jacks in La Honda, California. If you don't know where it is, you may want to look it up. But we decided to take a road trip. Now, we've gone to some common places and some nice places, but when we pulled up and we walked in, I was like, holy cow, this place looks like it hasn't been cleaned for years. The tacky decor, there was a man in the corner whittling. He looked like he was homeless. There was a dog laying on the front porch, and I thought to myself, oh crap, Dede's gonna have a cow. What are we doing here? She walked in, she goes, I love it, Miranda. Oh, look at her, says, you love it? I'm scared to touch the toilet. I hope I don't have to use it. But she absolutely loved it. She wanted to know the story. She wanted to know the story, the history of what I call this dump. She gets up into the bar stool and she looks up and there's these dollar bills everywhere. You know, like most dives have. She goes, what is that, Miranda? I said, well, you know, Dede, people come in, they get drunk, they put their names in the dollar bill, they stick it up there for whatever reason. She goes, I love it. She goes, do you think they'll let me do that? Oh, look at a Dede going, I don't even want to touch the glass now. I don't need the restroom. So she calls the bartender over, which is, of course, I don't know, 19? And she goes, I want to put this dollar bill up there. Is that okay? And the little girl says, yeah. I said, do you have a Sharpie? She goes, yeah. I said, Dede, you got to provide the dollar bill. She scooted on up. She wrote Dede, and the lady jumped up on the bar stool and stapled it. So if you're ever in La Honda, you have a place called Apple Jacks. If you go in, third bar stool from the right, if you look up, you'll see Dede.
Well, after my partner and I went to one of our first parties at Dede's, my partner Don said, you know, I feel like I've been to a party at Auntie Mae's at Beekman Place. And from that day forward, Dede became our Auntie Mae. And she really was. I mean, she introduced us to so much that we had never been exposed to before in the art world, restaurants, food, sculpting, I mean, we know there's so little of sculpting. But the gift, the most enduring gift that Dede gave us, and me in particular, are her friends became our friends. And I have so many people in my life that I met through Dede who impact my life in such a positive way. Lisa, Miranda, and Ivy, and another gentleman in this room is Urs, who was the most spectacular personality that I think we've met in many years. And Urs has taught me that I can actually carry a tune. And I consider that a gift from Dede. It's the most enduring gift. And my relationship with Dede is like, to me, it was a magic carpet ride that changed me forever in a really good way. And I just want to say one more thing to my beloved cousin Melanie. I'm so glad you went to the swimming pool in St. Martinville that June day.
Hi, my name is Michael Matthews. I'm lucky enough to be married to Ivy, and I got to know Mrs. Draper through Ivy. I would call Dede Mrs. Draper, and it just seemed so appropriate. And she invited us to dinner, and I emailed her a thank you, and Mrs. Draper, thank you for. I got the email back. She goes, Michael, I think it's about time we start. You can call me Dede, unless you think it's too soon. But Ivy and I got married September 24th, 2012, so we're newlyweds. And Dede was invited to the ceremony, and she did this for us, and I'd like to share it with all of you. And it's an ode to Ivy and Michael on the occasion of their wedding, with apologies to Mr. Longfellow. And it goes, on the shores of San Francisco, on the shores near Big Bay Bridge, lives a girl with get-well water. Water she keeps in her fridge. Now, I'll pause here to explain that Ivy's got this machine that processes water. It takes the chlorine out of the water and adjusts the pH, and she really likes it and has gotten Dede to like it, so much so that every Saturday Ivy goes over there with 2 gallons of water and shares it with Dede, and she puts it in there, and they share that. So she goes on. Fair of face and figure is she, this girl with get-well water, showed to me such love and caring, made me love her like a daughter. Came a man called Michael Matthews, a man with 2 first names had he. Saw the girl with get-well water, said to himself, this for me. Wooed the girl with get-well water, wooed the girl I love like daughter. Wooed her not with peach or mango, wooed her with a dance called tango. Took her dancing every night, wound his arms around her tight. Twirled and twisted he her frame, she never ever was the same. Thus won he the girl named Ivy, won the girl I love like daughter, won the girl with get-well water, which now he drinks more than he oughter. Found they both such fun and laughter, may they live happily forever after.
I'm Phil Pasquini, and I was Dede's sculpture instructor at Fort Mason. And I was in my office one day, and I got a call from a lady who said, I just moved here from New York, and I need a studio. Can I join your class? And I said, it's not a problem. I should probably meet with you at some point. She said, I'll bring my portfolio, which she did, and I was overwhelmed with her work and her enthusiasm and how she carried herself. She's just an amazing person. So we agreed that she should be not in the class, but in a room, which was appropriate for her. And she came back the next day, I remember, in a very New York fashion. She arrived in a taxi cab, and somehow she conned the driver into bringing her stone, very large piece of stone, into the room with her tools. She set up shop, and as they say, the rest is history. She was a great person, she exemplified to my younger students especially, and to myself as well, how you can grow old gracefully. Lifelong learning is something that's tangible and real, and having intellectual curiosity and being interested in people is what sustains all of us. And I can't think of a finer person here. No.
I was just informed that I need to go first because I'm the youngest. And that reminds me of a favorite thing I used to say when I was youngest, when I was growing up and everyone said, you're the youngest. I said, well, it's a good thing because that means I get to die last. So far, I'm right. I was going to take this time to prepare a few thoughts, but you know, everyone here has talked about how my grandmother, who I called Nana, was a wonderful and amazing woman, which she was. I want to share two things. One, when I came to her and told her I was pregnant and I was having a baby on my own, she sent me an email and she said, and then I told her I was going to have a son. She sent me an email and she said, a son is a wonderful thing to have. And she was right. Or, in my case, sort of right. But she told me towards the end that she thought I was very brave for what I had done and for my choices to have a child. And I said to her, you know, Nana, you would have done the same thing. You are that brave. And she said a few very poignant things to me towards the end. She talked about what her greatest qualities were and her accomplishments. And I think that that really embodied who she was. She said her greatest quality was her mind, which is absolutely true. Her ability to organize, her intellect, her interest in other people, as you all have brought up. And then she said her greatest achievement was when she became an interior designer or decorator. She said she really wasn't prepared for that at all from her schooling. But her greatest achievement was that she took it in stride and she accomplished a lot. And she was very proud of that. And so as her youngest granddaughter, I'm very proud to have had her as a grandmother. And one thing I would like to do, as we all knew her and see her pictures, I'd like to everyone to raise a glass to Nana, to Dede. Cheers. Cheers.
I'm Chris Grossman. I'm married to Ed, who Nana told me immediately after I met her could possibly be made a mensch with my help. Not that you were asking for help. But when I met Nana, we felt an immediate bonhomie. And I'm not sure if it's because I am an aspiring artist and she's an artist, or if we're both socialists. And I'll probably ruminate on that one for a long time, but I think both. And I think everything that people have said about Nana, her intellect, her ability to see people, the whole person in front of her, her consummate gift for looking at you and making you feel like the most special person in the room. Not through vapid flattery, but through genuine interest, was incredible. And we often joke that the key to Dede's longevity was martinis. Part of the key. I think the other part was threefold. One, her dedication to questioning, ever questioning everything, be it something intellectual, be it something personal. She always wanted to know, and then when you told her, she wanted to know more. And she said to my children, always ask questions, because that's how you find out the answer. The second thing was her passion to create. And again, I believe that her art, her love of art, and her passion for creating generated a vitality in her that lasted even beyond when she had her stroke. When we were at the Jewish home visiting one day, she beckoned me close and said, "This art, I can't stand it. Get rid of it. Bring my art from home, and I'll tell you which ones I want." We didn't have the chance. I thought, she's in there all right. The third thing was her ability to connect and cultivate love. And during the last couple days of her life, when we were at her apartment, I would comb the bookshelves for books, and she did love poetry, and also wrote poetry. And Zev just said, "Who wrote that poem about the lady with the water?" And I said, "That was Nana." And he said, "That was good." So I opened up an Elizabeth Barrett Browning book and started reading her poems, and I found one, I think it's number 17. I got to a line that she had at some point in her life underlined. I don't know when. The book was very old. And the line she underlined, it actually was 2. "If thou must love me, let it be for naught, except for love's sake only." And I've got to tell you, Nana welcomed me into this family and made me feel loved from the get-go. And I hope to pay it forward.
And I'll just say, Chris, you definitely did make Ed a mensch. He's a total mensch now. He's a carbon copy of his father.
Hi, I'm Ed. I know most of you, many of you. When Dede died, many of my friends kind of called and reached out to me to see how I was doing, how I was feeling. And, everyone was a little sensitive, thought maybe I was feeling a little sad. But really, I wasn't feeling sad. I was feeling a sense of gratitude because Nana had a really blessed life and a long life and a wonderful life. And I thought to myself, as she was nearing the end and as she died, I thought I should be so lucky. And it reminded me of a prayer that we tell every Passover. Many of you know this prayer. It's a prayer called Dayenu. And the Dayenu prayer, what Dayenu means is it would have been enough. It would have been sufficient. And so when I think about the gratitude that I would have and that I have for her life, when I think about all the things that she was blessed with, this prayer came to mind. So I'm going to read this prayer, but I'm going to talk about some of the aspects of her life. And for those who want to join me in it, at the end of each phrase, you can join me just by saying Dayenu. Had God given her a family that was able to escape from Europe and from persecution from the Nazis, but not brought her to America? Dayenu. Had God brought her to America and given her an education in a country with freedom, but had not given her all the natural talent and wisdom and keen wit that she had? Dayenu. Had God given her keen wit and talent, but not given her fast fingers? Dayenu. Had God given her fast fingers and made her an award-winning stenographer and led her to a secretarial pool where she met Lester? Dayenu. Had she met Lester but not started a family and had 2 beautiful children? Dayenu. Had she had 2 beautiful children, but they had not been such a success that one played Carnegie Hall and the other was a professor at Harvard? Dayenu. Had she had wonderful children who succeeded in life and made her happy, but had not had a chance to fulfill her own dream to have a career as an interior decorator? Dayenu. Had she had the chance to fulfill her own career as an interior decorator, but not had her second love in Richard? Dayenu. Had she had her second love of her life in Richard, but not had that third love of her life, which was her grandchildren? Dayenu. Had she had that second love with her grandchildren, but not had the love of her great-grandchildren? Diane. Please join me in saying together for all of these things by themselves and all of these wonderful gifts of freedom and education and talent and love and family and career and all of you, Diane.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Amy. I am her niece. Our relationship has to do with the fact that my mother and Dede were sisters. I want to tell you from the depth of my heart how proud I was of Dede. And I honestly tell you that everyone who knew me as an adult and knew me personally has learned of Dede. I was so proud of her accomplishments and who she was as a person. She was that marvelous and that compelling. Now, I've known Dede all of my life, which spans now 70 years. So as with Roger, I did think of her as my Auntie Mame. In fact, I almost wore a blouse that she had given me, one of two, because sometimes if she liked a blouse, she'd buy several of different colors. 2 silk blouses that she had given me maybe 30 years ago. This was just some of the clothes that she taught me about. And she also taught me about art, and she taught me about discerning human beings, and she taught me about the beauty of living in space, so that every moment that she existed in her space was very special and well placed. She taught me how to live, and her experience has made me a completely different person. My Aunt Dede. When I thought of saying something about her, I assumed that somehow I would have to characterize her. I would have to sum up what was Dede. And the best that I can do for you now, at this moment in time, is to say that she was a force of nature. She was a constantly evolving pure circle, where everything that came to her thrilled her, and she took it in, and that was the part of the circle that began. And it closed perfectly with her artistic and philosophical and educational and ethical contribution to the world as well. Constant circle going around. And I wanted to give you some examples of this ever-widening circle. But before I do, I also would like to characterize her as being truly the ideal of a Renaissance person. There were so many disciplines that she knew of and enjoyed immensely. If she didn't know it yesterday, she would know it today in depth. But then the second part of being a Renaissance person and the second part of the circle is to be able to express artistically all that was in that area. And so she took courses on philosophy at Harvard on the computer, and her only error, which was 1 or 2 points, was ridiculous, and she wrote to the professor, and very good fingers, Bill, and she said to him, you know, I think you worded that incorrectly. She was marvelous. She was marvelous to know. She was on fire at all times, and all of us were kindled by that fire, but in truth, we were just moths around the fire. There is nothing in this world for many of us like Dede Draper. She existed on a completely different plane. I thought I would give you a few very short stories, Bill, I promise, very short events about her life that you may not have heard, private moments that may not have become available to you. And I would like to do this just to fill her out just a little bit more. Of course, what you have heard from the people who have loved her so much, who were not in the immediate family, was that she had, and this was something, by the way, that Melanie said this morning, she had a keen awareness of people, so that as they came into her life, and she had this voracious enjoyment of learning new things, she looked at them for what they needed. and she responded in kind. But there was one time when she had a friend, a gentleman, who was part of her field, who unfortunately was dying of cancer and hospitalized. And she would visit him, but he was sinking. There was just no question that his time was limited. And she needed to do something just to give him some more time. So she went out and she bought some exquisite postcards. That was not enough. On the back of the postcards, she wrote an enticing and very exciting story. And the story always had a cliffhanger, and she would have just one part of the story for each postcard, which arrived at the hospital every day. And there was no way that he could die, because he had to wait the next day to find out what was going to be written. And of course, the next day there was always another postcard. However, she was not the only one who was aware of these postcards, because the nurses were also reading. and of course, from their ethical point of view, they didn't want him to die, but they also didn't want him to die because the stories would end. Such was her compassion, and such was her creativity. Her voracious love of everything came to me very clearly when we were discussing out of a newspaper article on transplants one day, when she said, "Oh, I'm ready for a transplant. I want to transplant my mind to a young body. I want so much more of this world, and the only way it's going to happen if I start again." Another way that she showed me how voracious she was and how enthusiastic was a few years ago, when I just casually mentioned to her that I was thrilled with the spices of Moroccan cooking. Just saying that, she was off and running. The fire was alight. So I sent her several cookbooks, and amazingly, though at best I might have tried one or two, she did, and I'd say this truthfully, at least 50 or 60 of the recipes, and many of you who visited her were the welcome beneficiaries of such a moment. I do want to mention just two aspects about her love of flowers. She adored flowers, and she did have a house at Point Lookout, which was opposite Jones Beach. She would start the flowers from seedlings, put them outside, and had a beautiful garden, 12 rose bushes at least. But there was an expanse of about, I don't know, almost like a half a mile of arid sand before the bay. And one year she just decided to take a lot of wildflowers and throw them to the wind. And a few months later, there was a profusion of flowers that had never been there before. Such was Dede. Such was her matchmaking with nature. She adored it so. And if any of you have been at her balcony here in San Francisco, you know that she adored the flowers. But at the end of the flowers was a very thin stem, and on the top of the stem was a glass cup, beautiful green glass cup, rimmed with red. And she would sit and tend her flowers as the hummingbirds would drink the nectar right next to her. And that's not all, because remember I said that her love of space and the way she lived her life was equal to her art in every way, so that her bedroom was parallel to the balcony, and she situated her makeup mirror just so that when she lay in bed, she could watch the hummingbirds drinking from the cup of nectar. I said to you before that to know Dede was to know that she was a perfect, unending, always extending, perfect circle. And I will end this, I promise, with two short stories. And they'll be short. Ivy, a dear friend, had given Dede gorgeous long stem orchids, yellow orchids. Dede loved them. Now I must tell you that at Christmas time, I spent the week with Dede. I came from New York. My purpose was to serve her, to be in the service of my Auntie May. And my beloved Dede. She at the time had told me that since the stroke, her nerves and her senses were exquisitely painful, and she was hallucinating, and for her life was chaotic internally. But those flowers were so exquisite that there was no way she couldn't recognize their beauty. And one day when I came to visit her, she said, "Amy, go out and get me an artist pad and charcoal pencils. I must draw them." And that was one of the last lessons that she gave me, that her art and her drive to express back to the world what she saw and enjoyed so much was unconquerable. And then one day, she turned to me and she said, you know, my life has been a sham. I said to her, Dede, you cannot tell me that, because I've been talking to you about you to all my friends all these years. How in the world can you say such a thing? Look at all the beautiful sculptures. Look at the paintings. Think of all that you've done. And she said, no. She said, it's love, Amy. It's love. And I'm thinking now about any moment I may have missed, any choice that wasn't true to love. And that was her last lesson to me, that in the perfect, ever circling, ever extending, pure circle, at the heart of that circle is the heart. Thank you.
We don't want this to go on too long, but I will say something very brief. So a lot of you actually don't know that if it wasn't for Dede Draper, I wouldn't be here today. And possibly I wouldn't have married my husband, which was one of the smartest things I ever did. But, you know, I was a very young girl, and when Bill asked me to marry him, I was 21. And I was from Louisiana and from a completely different culture. And he said, but I want you to come and marry me now. I want you to get on a plane and come up here and marry me. It was during the Christmas season and he had time off. Because he had a feeling that if we just waited and got, you know, married in Louisiana, it just wasn't going to happen. So he said, now is the moment. And of course, that was very sudden and frightening to me. And so I said, well, you know, I have to think about it. And Dede, not at that moment, but at another time, she said, Melanie, if I love a man as much as you love Bill and he loves you, she said, I'd follow him to the ends of the earth. And I could only really do it because I knew that although I was still young and leaving behind all my friends, all that I knew to come and have a whole new life, which I'm so grateful for, that I couldn't have done it without her, because I knew that she loved me and I knew that she would support me. And women need mentors, and I know that she would be there for me and that I would make it, because she was there and she had my back. And I'm very grateful. And I never forgot that. And I always thought about that. And I was very happy that I could repay her in some small way when she was at the end of her days, because she really, she truly changed my life and made all this wonderful life that I've had possible.
As you can hear, my mother was quite a person, and you've heard a lot. Today would have been her 100th birthday, and you know, I came here to the Yacht Club with her 8 months ago to plan her 100th birthday, and we looked around, and she wanted this room, and she had very definite ideas, and we planned it, and the guest list. And in going through her papers after she passed away, I found seating arrangements. She had it all worked out. So many of you are aware, it was the same guest list. And many of you are aware she had you planned to be seated. So I wrote some of these things down because I didn't think I'd be able to get through as well as everybody has done. I think you see that she had a pretty big impact on a lot of people, and that is for sure. She surely had a pretty big impact on me and on my sister. God bless her. My sister passed away in 1986 from cancer, breast cancer. So it's just been me for a good many years with my mother. As you know, she moved here, and when she came, she didn't want to be in assisted living. She said, that's completely ridiculous. I'm not in assisted living. And she used to like to tell people that she was moving to San Francisco because her son was getting on in years. Needed a little help. And I don't know what the hell I'm going to do now. I'm going to have to rely on you guys. And she did, of course, live independently, but I mean, she at 90, well, she moved here at 92 or 3, and she, right up until the day before her stroke, did her own marketing, her own cooking, and she would cook for me every Thursday night, a complete meal. From soup to nuts. And I recently heard that from someone who had done marketing with her, that she said, oh, I have to get this, Bill would really like this. And I was just really touched. She really made it, it was just fantastic. She did all her own finances. She did her sculpting and her art. It says a lot about her that she was actually giving a dinner party for close friends, many of whom you heard from tonight, and drinking champagne when she had her stroke. You know, that was my mother. What were some of her traits? You've heard about her love of travel and adventure a little bit. She traveled a lot, and my mother's sister, Amy's mother, who she died at what, 98? 98 and a half. The two of them were similar in some ways and different in some ways. They did like their martinis, and that was a similarity they had. But my Aunt Betty used to say about my mother's love for travel that if you would go wake my mother up at 3 in the morning and say, would you like to go on a trip? My mother's response would be, give me 10 minutes to pack. And then she would say, where are we going? She loved travel, and even until recently on the adventure that Lisa and Miranda told you about. She had tremendous curiosity, and I have to say it was annoying at times. Because she would constantly be asking questions and questions and questions, but it was a wonderful thing. I knew it, and I see it for sure now, that she wanted to learn. She always wanted to learn. When she was in her 80s and Edward started to get into the internet business, doing websites, she said, what is this internet? What? And we got her a computer. I think it was your old computer, and you taught her a little bit. Well, within 3 years, her nickname became E-Nana. She was online, and she was doing research projects for everybody. Me, if I would mention something and say, I don't really know much about Chopin or whatever it was, she would do research, and she would send me these long emails with links. I mean, it was incredible. And to the point that this past year, I think some of you saw the diploma she had over there, she was starting to take these online courses. She took one in philosophy from Harvard. This is a woman who never finished high school. She had to quit high school because she and her sister had to go out. Her father had died when she was 5. She took this course in Harvard, in philosophy from Harvard, and every week when I would go over for dinner, she would show me what she was studying. I mean, Immanuel Kant, and it was incredible. And she got a 92 on the final exam, and she felt gypped. She thought she should have gotten more. And she had wonderful curiosity. The last thing I have is I wanted to talk a little bit on what kind of a mother she was for me. And the main thing that comes to my mind is that she just had this undiluted, total faith in me and my sister. She was just devoted to our. She told me that I could do anything if I set my mind to it, which really isn't true. I mean, I can't fly. But that was her attitude, that she was a total go-to person. And a little anecdote is that in 1996, when I was asked to come out here and interview for the chief cardiology job at UCSF, I got a message. We weren't living in the same city. She was in New York, and I got a message. Please call me. I want to talk to you about this trip. And I thought, oh, she's going to say, Bill, you're going to move to California. It's so far away. Your family is here on the East Coast. Don't, be careful. Don't leap into this. That isn't what she wanted to say. I called her up, and she said, so what is this? Tell me about this job. And I told her a little, and she said, so what do you think? And I said, well, I'll have to go see, but it sounds pretty exciting. And she says, okay, well, just remember one thing when you go out there. She said, I could see her pointing at me. She was over the phone. You're a star, and don't you forget it. And if you go out there and they want you, they'll be lucky to get you. And I was just like, I was shocked. I mean, I did not expect her to say any of that, because she really, we were very close. And for me to go to California, in any event, that's kind of what I remember. She was my biggest fan, and I've got a lot of great memories. But I wish she was still here. She had a lot of living to do. Thank you.
What Dad says reminds me that she did have a lot of living to do. My mother said that Nana died before her time, which was true. We had a very unique relationship. I was with Nana at the end of her life, and I was also with her at the beginning of my life. I was telling Roger that she was the love of my life, and he said, well, what a coincidence. That she felt the same way, which she was so giving with her love to everyone, and that's one of the lessons that she taught me. And the love affair began, actually, when I had to come. I was born in the United States. My parents were in the Peace Corps, and my mother got sick. So they needed to send me to the United States to spend some time in Louisiana with one grandmother, and in New York in West Point Lookout with the other. And I showed up with bells on my toes, and I think it was love at first sight in one of those photos. It's my first nude photo. No, it's my only nude photo. But I was, 12 months old. So and then I lived with her many, many summers, many other times, a lot of the time when I was in New York. And she gave me many gifts, some of which she's given to others as well, a sense of beauty, a sense of actual sensuality, I think was very unique about her, and that informed her artistic sensibility. She gave me advice that actually usually my parents wouldn't like. She did not look at things conventionally. So a lot of times the thing that was expected or that would have looked good, that would have been more proper, she would tell me to go the other way. And I was like, yeah, I'll go for that. And I think that's one of the reasons why people say that meeting her was life transforming, because she just saw life in a very different way, and that was based upon 100 years of being here, based upon a very extraordinary intellect, based upon a life of overcoming a lot of struggles, and her many lives that she had in one life. When one career was ending, and Jennifer ended up at this big corporation. I never thought she would be there, and now she, wants to leave, and I'm so worried about it. And I'm in my late 40s, and Nana says, "Oh, it's still early days for her, She was still busy, starting new careers and starting new her art and all of that. So she gave me these things, and then the final thing that I'd say that was a real gift was she gave me the best father that anybody could hope for and dream of, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm just very, very lucky. If the waiters could start to pour champagne or sparkling cider to raise a toast, but first, Ed, can you help me? So we had two wonderful times in the past year of her life. One was we all went to Alisal Ranch, and that was over New Year's, and I got to share a little cottage with her. That was really special. I mean, really, she, at that point, she could walk, but, as we like to say, she could walk, but thank God she doesn't have to. And then the other time was my dad's fishing club up in Truckee, and this was recently. I broke out my iPad and took some of the photos, and then did many interviews with her, and she was singing away, so we'll play a couple of things.
And I guess all the things you always know for. Gee, I'd love to see you looking swell, baby. Diamond bracelets, your work doesn't sell, baby. Till that lucky day, you know darn well, baby, I can't give you anything but love. Great big beautiful doll, let me put my arms around you. Gee, I sure am glad I found you. Oh, you beautiful doll, you great big beautiful doll. You're as sweet as honey, and I love you so. If you ever leave me, baby, I'll be so unhappy. Don't leave me, you beautiful doll.
Just about, you don't have your champagne yet, but let's raise a toast in celebration of a wonderful woman who has touched us all, if not directly, then those that we know. So thank you to Dede, and you will always be with us. Thank you, Dede. Enjoy.
There's a buffet dinner, and so they're going to open it.